And I'm going to present a viewpoint of Advaita, self-knowing, and universal intelligence, not as though I am talking in a Hindu ashram, either in one of the mutts of the Shankaracharya, but I'm talking in the context of the Theosophical Society, which has been in existence for about 150 years. So I'm embedding the whole theme in that context. Now, the first observation I like to make is that the first line of founders of the Theosophical Society, namely Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Henry Steele Olcott, they started this society with an impossibly vast intention. And if we actually think about it and see what the first line of founders have achieved, not as an egoistic achievement, but achievement for the welfare of the planet, for the welfare of mankind, and brought to fruition and brought to fulfillment by the second line of leaders, Mrs. Annie Besant and Charles W. Leadbeater, we will see that this is actually an impossible miracle which they have created in the religious sphere. It is not a miracle in science and technology, but it's a miracle in the realm of consciousness and awareness and in the domain of the religions. Now, they said that there is no religion higher than truth. Now, this is a very enigmatic statement, and unfortunately we don't have the time to delve very deeply into this sutra, which is a new sutra. Formerly in the Indic religions, the so-called truth had an absolute quality, and it was enshrined in the sanctum sanctorum of the Indic religions. But in Madame Blavatsky's perception, you can see that she has taken the truth outside the domain of the religions, and she has placed it in the lofty clouds and said that it has to be a magnificent benchmark for all the religions to live up to. Now, there is something tremendous, a new line of thought, and altogether new perception, and we can go on wondering about it for years and years. And at this international convention, what is very significant is that as though the Theosophical Society in the here and now, under the leadership of the international president, they have somehow made a revisitation of the original vast intention of the first line of founders. And the first line of founders, the intention is being rekindled and revisited. That is the feeling that I have. Now, you can see, yes, I've been through that. Now you can see the founders, and these founders are very, very great. And I want to focus attention on the first line of founders and the second line of leaders, starting with Mrs. Annie Besant and Bishop Leadbeater. And my whole presentation of Advaita, self-knowing, and universal intelligence is to be understood in the context of the history of the Theosophical Society. That's my. So I covered that. And the Theosophical Society envisioned, the founders envisioned the four great people. They envisioned Himalayan masters of the Theosophical Society, who are like the Maharshis for the Hindus. They are sages and they are seers. And they may not be in flesh and in blood, in a body, but definitely they have an ethereal presence in other planes of consciousness, which is assigned to the Himalayan range. And it was the intention of the founders to work in collaboration with the intention of the masters themselves, so that Lord Maitreya, who is one of the masters, was held to be, who was held to have incarnated as Jesus Christ and held to have incarnated as Bhagavan Krishna, is going to incarnate again for the betterment of the world and to purify and ennoble the world. That was the intention, impossibly vast intention as we dream about it and as we think about it. And the Theosophical Society set out to search for an appropriate pure vehicle which the Master Maitreya will initially inhabit, and then he will blend into the consciousness of that human, and that human being was J. Krishnamurti. Now there was 20 years during which the Theosophical Society, especially Annie Besant and Bishop Leadbeater, they worked to groom Krishnamurti for the future role of the world teacher. That was their assignment. And Annie Besant did not gloss over and did not forget the vision of the first line of founders, and she brought to fulfillment the vision of the first line of founders by working very, very hard to be an anticlimax, and then a new beginning has to be made. That is how earthly life is. And notwithstanding Krishnamurti parting company with the Theosophical Society after being groomed for 20 years in the home and cradle and matrix of the Theosophical Society, a chasm developed between the world teacher who was now out into the open world, and because the Theosophical Society did not concur with the outlook of the world teacher, the perceptions were divergent, they went in different directions, and Krishnamurti went on to give the teachings to the world. It is a paradigm shifted teachings, and those teachings were flowing like a river for 70 long years, for 7 full decades. And you can see in these pictures, you can see Krishnamurti with his brother Nitya, younger brother, in the lower picture, and then Bishop Leadbeater seated in the center, and Krishnamurti and Annie Besant on either side. And so the association is far too deep. But then something happened, a rupture happened, and Krishnamurti walked out of the Theosophical Society. He disbanded the Order of the Star in the East, and it was a difficult reconciliation for both the world teacher who was in the process of inward flowering, and also for the mother matrix of the Theosophical Society, which gave birth to the whole phenomenon of the world teacher. Now I begin with 3 intangible words, and I added the adjective intangible because the 3 words self-knowing, advaita, and universal intelligence, they do not point to any sense object which we can go and touch and feel the reality of them. Advaita and universal intelligence refer to a transcendental reality which is not accessible to man's sensory perceptions. And self-knowing is the new paradigm of the world teacher, Krishnamurti. And through self-knowing, the essence of the new teaching is the person adventurers dare to go so far within themselves in an inner pilgrimage. Now, Advaita and universal intelligence point to ultimate reality, which has got a very special name in the Indic religions. And the Upanishads of the Bhagavad Gita, they refer to that ultimate reality as Tat, that. Why did they say that and gave importance to the demonstrative pronoun? Because anything else you describe becomes this, what we can know by sense of touch, through optical perception, through auditory perception, all of that, our entire human world is this, it can be touched. Whereas that is absolutely unapproachable, but all the same it exists for real. And that is the essence of the understanding which we need to develop. Now, in this whole meditative journey, we have to realize at the very beginning that the terminal destination is beyond the reach of the senses and the mind or consciousness, and it is held to be unknowable. The destination is unknowable, but it exists nevertheless, and there will be a proof which you will have to search for and which you will have to glean from the mysterious terminal destination. Now we begin the inquiry, the exploration and the inquiry to understand universal intelligence. Now, all human beings have two natures. We have a limited nature, an imperfect nature, and a survival-oriented nature, which I like to describe by the word self. Now, this self is not the self of the Bhagavad Gita and of the Upanishads. This is the traditional name for that is Jivatma, that is, it's the individual self. And to set it apart from the Upanishadic self and the Vedantic self, I have put it in bold and I have italicized it and I put it in lowercase. So it signifies the movement of individuality and the movement of the self within the human consciousness. Now, that has got various very definitive hallmarks which all of us can testify, especially those who have turned inward. They can very easily concur with me and they can say, yes, we have observed and we have no difficulty in agreeing with you, even though it's a difficult pill to swallow in the beginning. Now, its nature, it is self-protective, it is self-defensive, it is self-centered, and it has got the disease of wanting to be separate, and it has not only got the disease of wanting to be separate, but also in the divine architecture of things, it has got to deal with that separation which is there ab initio right from the very beginning. And then it's got a mentality of being divisive, it is acquisitive, it is secretive, it is suspicious, it is combative, it is aggressive. And this is the self we have to realize is who we are at the beginning of the journey. This is all that we know. Now, beyond this, very deeply nestled within ourselves is another domain of the human consciousness, not allowed to come into manifestation because it is veiled and pressurized by the hectic activity of the self, which is the cacophony. It's all the time happening. That is too much of cerebration, too much of self-defensive thinking, and too much of confusion. And because of that, the deeply nestled, radiantly godly nature and the divine nature has no chance to break through the closed gates and manifest in our day-to-day life. But if the cacophony and the noise in the top layer can subside and it can be brought to naught, then the more deeply nestled godly nature, the divine nature, will manifest as love, manifest as compassion, manifest as awareness, which is also intelligence, and manifest as a timeless nature of ourselves and an incorruptible self. And in the language of the scriptures, it is Chaitanya, and it is Atma, and it is Aham. And that particular word Aham is very significant because etymologically it means the first alphabet of the Sanskrit language and the last alphabet, and therefore it encompasses the totality of creation. So the really deep self that we have, which gives evidence of its existence and evidence of its reality, the moment the cacophony subsides, then that is a kind of mother of the totality of creation. All the planets, all the galaxies, and the whole of creation and the miracle of life on planet Earth, everything exists on the breast of the Divine Mother, and that exists as Aham in our consciousness. And the Gita has a certain chapter, chapter 2, where Bhagavan Krishna, he introduces to Arjuna a certain magnificent state of human consciousness called that of Sthita Prajna. The Sthita Prajna is one who effortlessly abides in the timeless now. He is not rocked by distracting thoughts. He is not pulled away from that position of equilibrium in the now by sensory distraction, by various kinds of sensory infatuations, by desires, by sorrow. He is ever rooted very deeply. And Sthita, the adjective, means that which is stable, that which is consolidated, that which is not flickering, and that which is not frivolous, and that which is not changeful, but timeless. So there is an intelligence. Prajna is that universal intelligence which the Theosophical Society is discussing at the 148th International Convention. Prajna is both the awareness, and Prajna is also that supreme intelligence. That supreme intelligence is available in the Sthita Prajna because in him the mind has been shut down. It's not active. It will act when there is a challenge, when you want food and the body is hungry. Then you will go and tell your mother or somebody, please give me some food. And Ramana Maharshi said in Tirunamalai, as a liberated sage, when he was only about 18 years old, he said, I'm very proud to go and beg for food. I feel like a king, he said, when I go and ask for food. And because he is in that, not only in the Sthita Prajna state where thoughts and desires and afflictions cannot intrude into that clearing. They can't get there. There is only stillness there, and there is bliss there. And that is the Sthita Prajna's state introduced in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And such a person, whether such a person can fit into mainstream society, that is a thing which we have to discuss later. But the Sthita Prajna's next assignment is to discover ultimate reality and the source of the intelligence which is enshrined in him and which is available to him at every beck and call. It's available to him. But if he wants to plumb the depths of that, then that comes in the second milestone, and Bhagavan Krishna says that he has to discover the ultimate reality or the unmanifest divine. So there are only two milestones in the spiritual journey. One is the milestone of being a Sthita Prajna. The second is the milestone of discovering Parabrahma or the unmanifest divine. There is nothing else in the spiritual journey. So milestone 1 and milestone 2. And now the default setting we have, all of us human beings, we have a default setting in which there is separation, there is sorrow, there is divisiveness. Now this is the only thing that we know. And we have to start from here, from this default setting, and see if we can reach the terminal destination which the Upanishads describe as that. So that is our assignment. And before we embark on that assignment, we have to be honest enough, and we have to say, especially all of us in whom thought is excessively active, thought is doing more of work than what is called for in intelligent and wise living. So because of that hectic activity of thought, we will have to see that that has led to no freedom, no clarity, and no intelligence, but only abundant confusion, abundant conflict, and sorrow in every relationship. So this is a result of the default setting, and therefore the default setting is not a happy thing at all. And therefore it is given to us now to overwrite on the default setting. Now, if we are passive and we do not make any effort in order to overwrite on the default setting, then the default setting will be as it is, and that is the state of original sin. In biblical terms, That is the state of original sin. That is, Adam and Eve have been driven out of the Garden of Eden. We have all of us have been driven out of the Garden of Eden. And the question is, can we regain the lost paradise? That's the whole question for us. And to regain the lost paradise is to go back home to that. Not ideologically, not idealistically, but actually whether we can do that. So that's the assignment for us. And that is the question that the Theosophical Society has posed for all of us on the occasion of the 148th convention. That can we explore and can we discover the seat of this universal intelligence? Can we understand it? Can we become comfortable with it? Can it become our life breath? That's the assignment for us. And going back to the tradition says that cannot be approached by any thought. If you have devotion to the divine, that is not good enough to approach that. If you do any sadhana, that entire sadhana is only getting away from that. Because the sadhana entails becoming. And every becoming, that sadhana may have a certain fruit, we'll come to that later. But every sadhana is more activity in thought and feeling. And the more activity we perpetuate in thought and feeling, the more we are straying away and wandering away from that where no activity can happen. So we are warned by self-realized masters and by the sages who have given us the Upanishads and all the scriptures that rarefying and emptying the whole field of consciousness leading up to the vacant mind, that is the assignment for us, whether we can do that and how do we do that. And so when we do that, we come to the vacant mind by rarefying and emptying. Then that is virgin ground. That is a state of unknowingness. That is a state of innocence. That is exactly the condition of Adam and Eve when they were in the Garden of Eden, and Manu and Shatarupa similarly in the Hindu tradition. So that is the one and only homework all human beings have to embark on. There is no other assignment. Bread and butter is a trifling small assignment. It can easily be met with because we do have that intelligence. That is not the purpose and the summum bonum of life. The summum bonum is, can we go back and find out what is our origin? Can we find out what is our mysterious connection to the unmanifest divine? That is the only assignment, and that assignment is called moksha. Now the traditional religions, they start with the divine. They are totally blind to the self that I revealed to you. And it is Krishnamurti who said that he will not put the spotlight on the divine. He will much rather put the spotlight on the self, because he pointed out that the self is evil. And therefore there has to be an ending of that evil in our lives. And that evil is the source of division. That evil is the source of separation. And it is a source of much mischief in thought and feeling, and therefore can that whole activity, can it come to a grinding halt? That's the assignment for us. And Krishnamurti, because he represents a new teaching and a paradigm shift, is the new world teacher. Therefore he said, start with the self and start observing every movement of the self. And when you keep on observing every movement of the self, then he never said, you will find this, you will discover this, because that is not Krishnamurti. He said, you discover, sir. You find out what will happen if you watch the movement of the self without judgment and without having any agenda and without wanting to change it, because you may see jealousy, you may see anger, and you should not have the desire to change that jealousy, to change that anger. And you should just watch, like a scientist is watching using the microscope and using the telescope. So that is Krishnamurti's approach. And as we keep watching, then in my experience, I found that the whole movement and activity of the self comes to an end. And comes to an end. And the process in the Krishnamurtian paradigm is, first of all, awakening to sorrow. That's the first thing. And then understanding sorrow, how the whole phenomenon of sorrow is created and sustained and given continuity. That's the stage 2. And the third stage is the ending of sorrow. Now, I passed through all the 3 stages, and this happened to me when I was 23. And I want to tell you that I parted company with sorrow at the age of 23, and it's never paid a visitation to me ever since. I'm 75 this year. And I want to say that the thing became very real to me. But you have to be sincere. Now, who is the one who qualifies for this? Now, if you have deep misfortunes in life, every misfortune is actually a calling. You're asked to come back home every time there is a misfortune. And if you're 60, 65, you're again asked to reconnect to the divine, reconnect to your source, to come back home. If you've had any kind of serious breakdown in life, there is a call for you to go back home. So only at those times you can assimilate and absorb Krishnamurti's paradigm shifted teaching, and that's a kind of nascent teaching, and that gives you without studying the scriptures. And I had to study the scriptures in order to find out what happened to me. I did not study the scriptures before that. My thing is, I was in a huge boiling crisis. My sense of self was dashed on the rocks of life to smithereens. So I had a sense of self, and that was the worldly self. That was an ambitious self, and that self was pulverized at the milestone of misfortune. Then I had no option but to turn inward and watch the activity of the self. So when I watched the activity of the self and I prioritized it, not making my worldly life first priority and this sadhana second priority, no. I made this the first priority at the expense of being a loser in worldly life. And then I found out the whole thing, whatever I'm presenting to you. I found out that sorrow can end, and then you can have the vacant mind. You may not have the vacant mind like Krishnamurti. That is the vacant mind from birth till death. That is too much. That happens only for a world teacher. And you can have a vacant mind for shorter intervals of time, especially when a misfortune visits you. And that is the time when you will make a discovery of the whole thing. No belief. Belief has no place here, and faith has no place here, even though faith is something marvelous. And yesterday, I happened to go to the book, the Hebrews, and I read one sentence about faith, and I was overjoyed. Even though I'm telling all the people who are listening to me, this is a journey beyond the milestone of faith. And I read that faith is the substance of what is hoped for. Faith is the evidence of what is not yet seen. So this is from the book of Hebrews, and obviously Mother Blavatsky, Madame Blavatsky, and Henry Street Alcott must have had this faith. That is, it is said that with this faith you can move mountains. Together you can move mountains. That's exactly what happened at the genesis of the Theosophical Society, and the power is still available for us. The question is, are we going to be passive, or are we going to dare to be foolish enough and to be wise enough simultaneously to go for the impossible? So that's our assignment. Not just an assignment for the president, for Radha Bernier, the previous president, and Mr. Tim Boyd, who is in the chair today, but for all the people who have come to Theosophy, and for all the people who have come to Krishnamurti, whether they can prioritize this learning, and whether they can be completely open when there is a visitation by misfortune and know that the time has come. So that's the time you can go home. You cannot go home at any other time when life is happiness begetting, life is pleasure begetting, life is fulfillment begetting. At that time you can't go back home. The door will be closed. You can only go back home after 65, after 65, or when you've seen enough of life, or when a misfortune hits you like a thunderbolt, then you can go back home. That is the time that teaching becomes pertinent to you, teaching becomes very relevant to you. And the whole process, the new paradigm is, inward flowering through self-knowing. And the Theosophical Society's insistence and emphasis on universal intelligence is an echo of what is in the scriptures. And so I need to push this forward. And in the scriptures, in the Upanishads, as Dr. Radha Raghunathan already emphasized, there is abundant testimony to the presence of universal intelligence. And the Mahavakya is Prajnanam Brahma, that is, Godhead or the unmanifest divine how does it manifest itself? It manifests itself as universal intelligence. And that universal intelligence is available to all of us whenever you're deeply interested in something, as a scientist, as a dancer, as a painter, as a mathematician, as a businessman. You're deeply interested in something, then your consciousness becomes still, then there's a clearing. And in that clearing, the universal intelligence will begin to erupt like a fountain. In like thin threads, it will erupt, and it will come in the form of insights, and then that will sanctify your work, and that will become the central idea of your Nobel Prize winning work if you're a scientist, or if you're a great artist, something else. Now it's already active in everybody, and the more silent we are, the more it is flowing. But it is so subtle that when it does flow, we may make the Himalayan mistake of saying, I am very intelligent and I got this insight. No, that's not the case at all. It's a property of the divine. It's a fragrant breeze which has come from the realm of the unmanifest. It just came into your chamber because you were momentarily virtuous. Not always, momentarily only. And then you become the recipient of that, and you share that with the whole world. Now, in the Upanishads, Prajnanam Brahma, and David Bohm and Krishnamurti's conversations, 10 dialogues in Rockwood Park in 1974, the published dialogues are called Awakening of Intelligence, where Krishnamurti is constantly referring to this. And Krishnamurti said, unless you awaken to sorrow, this intelligence will not, the gate won't open. You have to awaken to sorrow first. And awakening to sorrow means the entire activity of the so-called mind and the self, it has to be shut down. Now, when it is shut down once, there is a moratorium, then it may be imprisoned, the activity, for 6 months or 3 months or 3 years or 10 years. Then again it will begin. Again it will begin. Then again you need a second dying. In Krishnamurti's parlance, you need a second dying, a third dying, so that you'll be ever young, you'll be ever fresh.